What's up guys, my name is Mads. As some of you know, I did a video a while back where I borrowed my father-in-law's Nikon D500 and I did a little bit of a comparison between the Nikon D5300 that I'm using and his Nikon D500. And the video turned out to be really good, pretty much liked it very much, but it's kind of hard to do a comparison between his camera and my camera. The price difference in the house itself and the lens itself is pretty big. So what I'm going to do in today's video is that I am going to test out the kit lens for the Nikon D5300 and the kit lens for the Nikon D500. So today's video is going to be very stationary because I don't want to change anything whatsoever. The f-stop is going to be the same, the ISO is going to be the same, the shutter speed is going to be the same, and the length between me and the camera is going to be exactly the same. So the standard lens for the Nikon D500 is a 16 to 80 millimeter lens with an f-stop from 2.6 to 17, something like that. Pretty high up the scale right there, compared to the Nikon D5300, which is a 18 to 55 millimeter lens with an f-stop from 3.5 to 5.6. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to the Nikon D5300 lens, the standard kit lens, and just as the f-stop and the ISO and the shutter speed right now is, I'm going to let you see what the difference is, because there is going to be a difference. I'm not going to move, the camera's not going to move, but I'm going to change the lens now. So first off, as you can see, the f-stop is exactly the same at 4.5. Looks pretty good, looks pretty decent. Both the qualities looks pretty decent. But as you can see, I am way closer to the camera now than I was before. And I haven't moved the camera whatsoever. These 2 millimeters that there is from this lens to this lens actually does a pretty big difference. And that is pretty crazy. Now I'm gonna do some low light videos so you can see where the difference is and where you can really see it. So now I'm gonna turn down the f-stop on this camera, turn off the light, and then I'm gonna switch to this lens, and then I'm gonna show you once again the f-stop and with the low light. So let's turn off the light and let's see if we can adjust it, and let's see what ISO and what f-stop we need to change and how much we need to change it in order for you to see me like you do now, almost like you do now. So this is basically the exact same setting, just with no light. So what I'm gonna do first is I am gonna see if I can change the f-stop on the lens that I'm on now, and see how much I need to bump the ISO up for you to see me just normally. So I changed the f-stop from 4.5 to 3.5. There is barely any difference whatsoever. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna bump up the ISO so you can see me, and let's see how much we need to bump it up in order for you to see me just fine. So around here, and right now I have the ISO at 2000, I have 3.5 f-stop, and I have 1/50th in the shutter speed. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change back to the Nikon D500 lens. I'm going to see how much I need to change it in order for you to see me with this lens. So what we have here is the exact same settings, f3.5, 2000 ISO, and 1/50th in the shutter speed. So what I'm going to do now is I am bumping the f-stop just a little bit low as this lens allows me to. And as you can see, the image is getting brighter, and that's because the sensor in the lens is opening up wider. So as you can see here, let's see just a little bit. Here we have 3.5, 3.2, 2.8. So already now it's gotten just a little bit lighter, which means that we can change the ISO, just bump it down a little bit. This is 1250 ISO. So there is a difference, and the reason why this is such a big difference and so important is if you have a cheap lens like this one and you are in a dark situation, you need to bump up the ISO really high, and the higher you go with the ISO, the more grainy it is, the more noisy it's gonna get. Let me give you an example from this one with higher ISO and low f-stop, and then this one that I'm using now, high ISO, low f-stop, just in order for you to see. I'm going to turn off the loft light and I'm going to show you. So the only thing that I have on right now is the background on my PC, and that's about it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bump up the ISO just for you to see me. So let me see here. In order for you to see me, as you can see now, I'm gonna set it around here, because at this point you can see me fairly and it looks pretty decent. But as you can see, look here, just looking at the screen because this is easier. Look over here at the curtain and look over here at the shelf. Basically just look everywhere. You can see it starts to get grainy, and that's because the higher the ISO, the more grainy it gets. Let's bump it all the way up. Now the ISO, this is the artificial light. It's light that the camera is creating for you to see the image. But as you can see right now it's very, very visible. Look at all this grain. Look at my face, look at the shelf. It's very, very grainy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change back to the cheap lens and see how much we need to bump it up for you to see me the way you see me now. So the f-stop is 3.5 instead of 2.5 now with the Nikon D5300 lens. And look all around me. It is grainy as ever. Can we see if we can put up the ISO just a little bit? That's the other way. Now this is the highest ISO is going, and you don't want this to happen when you are recording anything. Really, you do not want this to happen when you record anything. You want as bright as a light as possible, so you can turn up the f-stop and turn down the ISO. You don't want to have a low f-stop and then a super high ISO. You want the other way around if possible. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on my softbox and the loft light, and let's see how high we can keep the f-stop, see how low we can take the ISO with the Nikon D5300 standard kit lens. Before I do that, there is one thing I want to say, and that is a big difference from when you're shooting and when I'm shooting, and I basically just noticed it now, but I've been using it the whole weekend, because this weekend I used this lens when I was at my cousin's place, and I didn't really think about it before, but when you are using the kit lens for the Nikon D5300, you cannot change the f-stop when you are recording. So if I'm trying now to change the f-stop, nothing is happening. But if I put on this lens and change the f-stop, I can do it while I record. So back to the thing, I am going to turn off the camera, put up the f-stop, and then let's see what is going to happen. Now we have the Nikon D5300 lens at f10 and still 800 ISO. So as you can see now, it is darker, and when you want to change this is depending on the weather outside. If you are a very, very sunny place and there is a lot of sunshine, a lot of light, maybe a concert, something like that, you might want to have a higher f-stop and then a lower ISO. Compared to when it's dark and it's night out, then you want to have a low f-stop and not a super high ISO, but you still need to be able to take photos or vlog or whatever you want to do outside. So let's bump down the ISO just a little bit. If we raise the ISO just a little bit now, as you can see, the image will get lighter, and again that's because this is the artificial light, and that is the camera that is creating this light, and you don't want your camera to create light. Basically you want natural lighting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change back to the Nikon D500 standard kit lens. Again, same settings. Of course the image that you're watching is basically the same because the settings are the same, so it should pretty much be the same, but again you don't want to have an f10. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it just a little bit down to wherever it's going to fit me, and then we're going to change the ISO so we can take that down to around here. This looks good. So now I have an f-stop at 2.8 and an ISO on 200, and pretty much this is what I like when I'm in a setting like this. I have a softbox, I have loft light, basically have everything that I need to create a good scenery. you can see me and everything is pretty nice. And to that comes the focus. So one thing that I'm not a particularly fan of is that the autofocus is very, very noisy when it comes to that. As you can hear, I have it on autofocus at the moment, and we are actually in Viborg right now because my girlfriend is getting her eyebrows tattooed for the second time, and I wanted to test it out now. But yeah, it is on full autofocus. As you can hear, the motor is always working to focus on my face, and to be honest, it's really annoying. So I don't think that the autofocus on this camera is as great as it could be. So once again, as you can hear, listen. It is always working really hard to keep focus on me, and when it's focusing this hard to keep focus on me, it's very noisy, and I don't like that. If I want to have full autofocus on, which I have now, I want it to be dead silent, and this lens is simply not dead silent. I don't know what is going on with it, but it's way too noisy for me to have an autofocus. So I normally have it on manual focus, and then I just press the shutter button halfway down and then focus on whatever I want to focus on. So let me just turn it off and show you what I mean. For example, now it is on manual focus. I can focus it by pressing the shutter button halfway down. So let's say I come all the way up here really close and press the shutter button. Should be able to focus. Nope, that's not the point. This is the point. Something like that. When I go back now again, I'm out of focus, and now I'm in focus. So that is pretty much what I like about this. If I should give it a rating 1 out of 10, and I am taking my own lens in consideration, then I would say my own lens is a 1. And this lens, in comparison, is a 6. It's around a 6, and the reason why it's not any higher than 6 is because, first of all, it's noisy when the autofocus is on. Second of all, it's a 16 to 80 millimeter lens. I want a 10 to 20 millimeter lens, or 10 to 15, or 10 to 18 millimeter lens even. That would be sick if I could have a 10 to 18 millimeter lens, but I don't think they exist for Nikon cameras. I only think they exist for Canon cameras. And as I've said in earlier videos, my next big setup when it comes to vlogging like this is going to be a Canon 80D, unless something newer and better is coming on the market, but then a Canon 80D with a 10 to 20 millimeter lens. That's pretty much, and hopefully I can get it with a nice f-stop, with a nice low f-stop. We'll see about at that time, but for now, this is pretty much gonna be it. I'm not gonna turn off the video now. I'm gonna do that when I come home.